After falling 37-20 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Washington Commanders head home to tackle the problems that led to them starting the season 0-1. That and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Commanders fans, to this bonus live post-game episode of the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, David Harrison, credentialed member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. Here with you every Monday through Friday. This week I was here with you Saturday, and now I'm here with you Sunday night. Thanks for coming through for this episode. To all our everydayers out there, thanks for coming through every single day. Locked On Commanders is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders. If you haven't already, you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this episode, where we're going to talk about the Week 1 matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Washington Commanders. And you know what? Just like the Washington Commanders, a little bit of a functional issue with this episode. I got to bring up the right banner here, but I'll do that as I continue talking. Of course, if you want to get more out of the Locked On Commanders podcast, you can do so by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. I was texting my insiders all night during the game. We'll continue to text them after the game through my flight home tomorrow and then on into the future. Join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to become an insider today. So final score 37-20. The Washington Commanders fall to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A lot of you probably watched the game. If you didn't watch the game, you're going to come here and get about a 15-minute recap. So you don't have to watch the game if you don't want to. But you know what? There are actually a lot of important things to really see in this game, and not just from a sitting in the booth or sitting at home on television type of standpoint. I can't wait to actually dive into the tape here, because I do actually believe that there are going to be some positives. Right now, we don't want to get crazy and do all these things, and certainly nobody here is making excuses. Talked to Sam Cosmi in the locker room after the game, and he's kind of talked about, look, this is a relatively young team, a lot of new pieces, kind of our first time fully doing this thing, but that's not an excuse. We got to be better. More importantly, we got to get better, because the New York Giants are coming in just next week. Dan Quinn kind of talked about the same thing and said, look, the roster turnover is what it is. The coaching turnover is what it is. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you got to go out there and you got to execute. So the final score is what it is. The rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels, came through. Some impressive things, some good things. What you don't like to see is 16 carries by your rookie quarterback, even when he's incredibly athletic. 88 yards total rushing, 2 touchdowns, also 2 times getting his helmet knocked off, which you don't want to see. He was also 17 for 24 passing, 184 yards, 93.1 quarterback rating. So again, a decent statistical, first game for a rookie quarterback. Certainly there have been worse, but on the flip side of this conversation and competition, you got Baker Mayfield, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going 24 for 30, 289 yards, 4 touchdowns, a 146.4 quarterback rating. And even rookie running back Bucky Irving on that side of the ball, doubling Rachaad White's rushing output with 62 yards, had a long of 31. Rachaad White getting 31 yards on 15 carries. And of course, we've been talking about it all week, guys. We talked about it in our game previews, talked about it with Logan, talked about it with James Yarko of Locked On Bucks. The secondary, Chris Godwin, 8 catches on 8 targets, 83 yards and a touchdown. Mike Evans, 5 catches on 6 targets, 61 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jalen McMillan, the rookie, only 1 catch on 3 targets, but that 1 catch, 32 yards and a touchdown. Meanwhile, Terry McLaurin, 4 targets, 2 catches, 17 yards. We've been talking about this with the Washington Commanders offense for far too long now. You've got to get your stars involved early, and you've got to keep them involved often. And Terry McLaurin getting 4 targets in this game is not going to be acceptable. Terry McLaurin getting 2 catches in this game is not going to be acceptable. You like what Austin Eckler did. You like what Brian Robinson did. Both those guys combining for 7 catches, over 100 yards through the air. Brian Robinson also 12 carries, 40 yards. Austin Eckler, 2 carries, 10 yards. So the running backs certainly getting involved in there. Zach Ertz also had 3 catches, 28 yards. Not quite the Jaden Daniels, Zach Ertz combo pairing I was hoping you guys would see in this debut, episode of Washington Commanders 2024 football. But at least it's kind of breaking the ice and giving you guys an idea there. The key play of this game, key play that led to this loss, there's a lot of them. Like I can't, I want to stick to my own show format, right? And I want to say here's like the key play, but I can't do that. I can't do that with integrity. I can't do that with honesty, because the key play to this game was all the missed tackles. And I had one insider say, bro, I hope you're counting the missed tackles just on Baker Mayfield alone. And unfortunately, no, I was not, because I was not coming into the game. Even though we talked about the potential of missed tackles and tackling issues with this defense being a potential problem in this matchup, I did not come into it saying I need to tally all the missed tackles. And it's honestly quite a good thing that I didn't, because I wouldn't have been able to track most of the stuff that I was tracking on top of it. But we're certainly going to go through and talk about Dan Quinn, talked about it a little bit. I talked to him. I actually asked Dan Quinn, I said, because I've talked to coaches in the past who kind of say that teaching tackling is really, really hard in today's NFL with all the restrictions on contact and all these things. It's really kind of difficult to do. So when you have a guy who's not a great tackler, it's a little bit difficult to make him a better tackler. Dan Quinn actually took the opposite direction. Said there are actually things you can do to teach tackling and how to teach getting better at tackling. And it kind of starts with your angles, right? It kind of starts with how you pursue. And I totally dig that. I get it. Now, I don't know, if that's more like coach speak, confidence, like I think we can teach it, or if he's like, legitimately like saying, like, as an NFL expert inside the league, like, no, David, we can actually teach this. Of course, we're going to be watching it moving forward. So we're going to see if it actually gets better or not. And that's the top take from the game, guys, is this Washington Commanders defense, like, as much as the secondary obviously needs to improve, as much as coverage obviously needs to improve, this team just in general has got to get better at tackling. I'm going to be breaking down Dorrance Armstrong Jr.'s tape. It's not out of wanting to accentuate the negative, right? But obviously you're in a losing situation, in a losing game, where you had that quarterback, that opposing quarterback, Baker Mayfield, where he was running around this field behind me. He was stepping up in the pocket. I mean, there were plays where, and if you watch the game, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about, where he drops back, steps up in the pocket, goes left, goes right, drops back deeper in the pocket, and then somehow still escapes. You can't have that happening if you're the Washington Commanders. You can't have that happening if you're any defense. If you're the South Dakota Bisons going up against the Alabama Crimson Tide, if you've got a quarterback on the other side of that line of scrimmage bouncing all around the pocket trying to get away from your pressure, you've got to find a way to finish. So Dorrance Armstrong Jr., I think one of the guys that brought the most pressure, or at least effectively got into the backfield most. I'm going to break down a lot of his tape. Honestly, pretty much going to break down the entire defensive front and talk about that here in an upcoming episode. But we've got Dan Quinn tomorrow. So tackling is going to be one of the main topics on the offensive side of the ball. How do you get the weapons more involved? Because, again, Jaden Daniels cannot make a living in the National Football League running the ball 16 times. I thought it was absolutely bananas that Lamar Jackson, a league MVP, an AFC championship game competitor, one of the best quarterbacks and experienced quarterbacks in this league, I thought it was bananas that he ran the ball 16 times in his week one debut. But here we are now, Jaden Daniels doing the exact same thing. So this is not sustainable. Obviously, didn't produce a win anyway, but it's certainly not sustainable. So those are some things that we're looking for the Washington Commanders to improve as they get ready for week 2 against the New York Giants. But of course, we got a whole lot of time to continue breaking this down. And we're going to do that with some other notes from the game, some other observations that I noticed as well. We'll talk about that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you never skip leg day. Maybe you meditate every day. You do yoga, or you never miss therapy day. At the same time, maybe in our adult ages, we've kind of lost that urge to get better, to learn, to develop ourselves. We look at the children of the world, even teenagers of the world, and they're always learning. They're always wanting to do better things. And so they're always trying to get healthier, get smarter about something. So what do you want to learn? You want to learn gardening, you want to learn a new language. What's something that you always had a passion for as a child, but have kind of lost that edge for as an adult? And perhaps you need to reinvigorate that into your routine. And again, could be a workout related thing, could be an intellectual thing. It could just be relaxing, right? Do some yoga during sundown. Go hang out in the hammock. It's not really a skill, but you get where I'm going with this, right? So therapy can help you do those things, because what therapy can do is help you identify what's important to you, identify what drives you, and help you find the time to make it happen. Because one of our biggest hangups as people is we look at what we want and we say, man, that's selfish. I can't do that. I got to be about other people. Therapy will help you get that done. So never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Today's episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. Hopefully you can still hear me over the blower going on behind me, but PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members, including yours truly. It's the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, and unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you got to do is pick more or less than 2 to 6 player stat projections, and then watch your winnings roll in. And all the month of September, all you got to do is take the more than on 1 Caleb Williams passing yard for the Chicago Bears, and you'll get one of those wins on Prize Picks every single week. That's right. Only 1 yard passing gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September, as long as Caleb Williams is throwing the ball. And I know he was throwing the ball today. I don't actually know what happened in the Chicago Bears game, but I'm pretty sure he threw for more than 1 yard. So that's 4 free weeks of wins. Don't miss that deal, because when September ends, that deal is gone on Prize Picks. You can win up to 100 times your money by picking as little as 4 correct picks. It's a fun app, so download the Prize Pick apps today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even got to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, wrapping up this bonus episode of Locked On Commanders here live on the Raymond James Stadium surface. And I didn't give you one key play because there's just too many missed tackles to isolate it just one or just even a couple. So we're going to go through, but I'm going to give you the play of the day. The play of the day also is not one as well. The play of the day, we're actually going to have 2 of them, and they're both involving your running backs. So both those guys did a really good job. Austin Eckler is one of them. Brian Robinson Jr. is one of them. So they're both pass plays, right? So Jaden Daniels first finds Austin Eckler. That was on the Washington 44-yard line, 2nd and 10 play. Austin Eckler takes the catch, gets upfield, turns upfield, 22-yard gain, gets all the way down to the Tampa Bay 34-yard line, leads to a Brian Robinson rushing touchdown. The next pass play that we're isolating here, 1st and 10 at the Tampa Bay 33. Jaden Daniels again in the shotgun, comes off a no huddle just like the first one did. It's a short right side pass to Brian Robinson, who takes it down to the Tampa Bay 1. Initially, I kind of thought he had gotten into the end zone. Turns out that he didn't, but he did gain 32 yards, set up a 1-yard touchdown run by Jaden Daniels. So those 2 plays, when you're looking at the Washington Commanders and you're trying to hunt the good stuff, that's what you're going to look for, is those 2 plays. Not just those 2 plays, but what your quarterback did as far as decision-making, and also what those running backs were able to do as contributors. Some other takeaways here, some rough days, right? Emmanuel Forbes was on the field. He was off the field. Not really sure if he got benched, if there was an injury situation. There's a potential for one of those things to be true. That's something that I plan on asking Dan Quinn tomorrow during the Zoom press conference. But also Benjamin St-Juste dropped an interception earlier in the game. He's going to get an earful about that from Joe Witt Jr. And then also that drive led to a field goal. So he drops the interception. The Buccaneers end up getting a field goal. Then he gets beat later down the field on the left side of this end zone over here by Mike Evans. And look, Mike Evans is a future Hall of Famer, right? So a lot of dudes have been beat by him, but certainly not a great day for Benjamin St-Juste. Emmanuel Forbes, again, possibly benched, possibly hurt. We'll get an update from Dan on all the health issues coming up on Monday. But he also had a double penalty where he had a face mask and a DPI. I mean, the ref stood on the field, literally said, because the face mask is the DPI, we're going to tack it on to set up a 4-yard touchdown pass to Chris Godwin. And again, we talked about Chris Godwin and the problem that he could create with the secondary, and he absolutely created that problem for the secondary. And then talk about getting Terry McLaurin involved, but not just Terry. Too many times, Jaden Daniels is reaching the top of his drop in this offense and having to make other decisions, having to improvise. It's great to have a quarterback that's capable of doing that, but to have him need to do it as much as he did today, certainly problematic. So I expect Cliff Kingsbury and this entire offensive coaching staff to be going back to the drawing board and getting some new plays drawn up, or just fine-tuning the plays they already have, get these players to their break points faster, more effectively, so that their quarterback has got people to throw the ball to. And then Cade York. I mean, what else can you say, guys? 4th kicker that this team has had this year, 2 missed field goals, 2 made extra points, so kudos there, and 1 kickoff out of bounds. You just can't do it. 3 stars of the game. We are going to find 3 stars. Again, we're going to wrap this up by hunting the good stuff. Star number 3, Austin Eckler. Great effort. Great job getting the ball through the air and turning into some big plays like we just talked about in those key plays. Star number 2, Brian Robinson Jr. No surprise there. If Austin's a star, Brian Robinson Jr. is certainly a star. Star number 1, Jaden Daniels. Sam Cosmi talked about in the locker room. Even with everything going on, even with the game result essentially in hand and decided already, he stayed calm, he stayed poised, didn't turn into superhero mode. Like, I just need to do everything on my own, which typically only makes things worse. So he earned a lot of confidence from his teammates today by the way he was able to compose himself and conduct himself. No turnovers, a couple of balls that were kind of a little bit iffy, but nothing too egregious. So Jaden Daniels certainly earning some clout today. Look, I also want to shine a little bit of a light honorable mention on Jamin Davis. Jamin Davis, first game as an NFL edge defender, filled a lot of really good gaps, made a lot of really good plays, especially early in the game. So Jamin Davis getting a little bit of shout out here. But I'm going to hit the road here, guys. I'm going to leave Ray J, get ready to leave Tampa, be back home tomorrow morning So we will have another episode drop in on Monday after the Zoom press conference with head coach Dan Quinn. I've got some other stuff to do as well, so I can't tell you exactly what time that's going to drop, but it will be coming. In the meantime, if you've got questions or comments, all you got to do is text me. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders, and you can text me today as a Locked On Commanders insider. Next, check out the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast, get all your updates and your advice. And thanks for coming through to check out the Locked On Commanders podcast every day. Thanks for coming through every single day. Until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I will see you next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.